Welcome back. In this section, we're going to be learning about controllers. Controllers help us get data onto the page. Here you can see we have a JavaScript object. It's a gem. And we need to sell this in our store. So how do we get it out of this variable and onto our page? To do this, we need to use a controller. Controllers are where we define our application's behavior by defining functions and values. Here we are back in our app.js. We're going to wrap our entire application here in a closure. It's just a good habit to get into. Then we'll specify the name of our controller, in this case, store controller. It's important that this is in capital case, and we always use the word controller. The second parameter that we pass in is an anonymous function. The code in here is what will be executed when our store controller is called. Now let's move our gem variable into our app.js. Now from inside of our controller, we need to set this gem equal to a property of this controller. So we'll call this.product. Product is a property of our controller, and set that equal to gem. Now we need to figure out how to get access to this data from inside of our HTML. Back inside of our HTML, you can see I've written out a template for where I want to display the gem information. That's where we want to load it onto the page. Let's bring back up our controller, just for reference. The first thing we'll want to do is to use the ng-controller directive. This allows us to attach our controller to this element inside of our HTML. As the value of this attribute, we'll write the controller name, in this case store controller. We'll use the keyword as, and then specify an alias for this store controller, which we'll use inside of our expressions. Then, inside of our expressions, we'll write store.product.name to access the value we want to print out to the page, and then store.product.price and store.product.description. If we call up a browser, we would see that it properly prints out the values from this JavaScript object. So we attached the store controller to that div. What would happen if we tried to access a property from that store controller outside of the div? Well, it wouldn't work. That's because we only have access to the store controller inside the div. The scope of the controller is only inside that DOM element. Why don't you try writing a controller and playing around with the ng-controller directive?